Hello, everyone. Welcome to Faith and Fellowship. We're three guys based in Utah. I'm Kirk.
I'm Joel.
And I'm Lyric.
And the goal of our show is to share stories and beliefs from different people local to our area.
Our mission is to bring civil discourse and allow people who hold different faiths a platform to tell us what they believe.
The show's model consists of an interview episode and a follow-up response episode where we'll discuss the topics that were brought up with our guests in the initial interview and give our take from a biblical standpoint.
Full disclaimer, not all comments and opinions expressed by our guests represent our own opinions. Thank you guys for listening and enjoy this episode.
Ready?
Are we just like doing a bloopers episode?
We just make this our intro.
Welcome to Faith and Fellowship. Thank you for joining us. We are back with you for another podcast, and we have a special treat because we are trying to get
I don't know if I'd call it that.
It's a special treat. We have in the studio today Joel, co-host. We have he also runs the controls, so he claps for
that
himself.
Was Lana. Lana was clapping for me because she knows how popular I am.
He's a lot more popular
among
now,
Lyric,
since he took a picture with his shirt off after lifting weights today and put it on social media.
Are we leaving that in?
Or he might be a lot less popular now. I'm not sure. Depends on your perspective. We have Lana with us, and she's a co-host, guest co-host, however you want to put it. She's been with us for a while now.
I've been on more episodes than Joel has.
Let's just be real.
Actually,
Let's
I
be
don't know.
real.
I haven't done the math.
We have,
but I wouldn't be surprised.
Probably about the same.
The three co-hosts are Lyric, Joel, and me, and we have 4 mics. So when we have a guest in, we don't have enough mics. So today we have a guest, but we have 4 mics. What does that mean? Woo! We're going to be interviewing Lyric today.
Oh boy.
And we're excited. Jeez. We're excited he is back in the studio with us. Holiday break and then New Year's and now school and everything is back in full swing. And so we've talked about Lyric doing his testimony for some time, and so it's going to be exciting because I hope we can fill in the gaps some. I know I may know bits and pieces, and Lana may know bits and pieces, Joel may know, but I think we're all going to learn something new. And then for you out there who are listening, we hope his testimony is going to be just a blessing in the fact that, you know, God is building this church, and the gospel is exciting and it works, and I think we'll see that in your life. So excited about that, Lyric.
Yay.
Lyric is our special treat.
That was me.
Emphasis on special. Is that what you were doing there?
Special treat.
I was just
Special forces.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. We won't. I guess we need to tell the story, since we're going to do that, unless you're going to edit out. But
No, go for it.
Of special forces?
no, there was a
Special
comedian.
Forces.
We watch comedians from time to time on YouTube.
Your knowledge of online comedians, SNL skits is so vast.
This was not SNL.
Slightly scary.
It's not SNL. This one was Britain's Got Talent.
What are you doing watching Britain's Got Talent?
I don't know. I'm looking for talent. I don't know. I'm looking for entertainment
Looking
purposes.
for a new
And he likes the accents.
podcast host?
He really
anyway.
likes the main judge. What's his name?
Simon Cowell?
Yeah.
I don't know
Simon?
if he does Britain's Got
Oh, he
Talent
does.
too.
He does.
both. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a comedian who actually won the whole thing, and he was called the Lost Voice Man. He doesn't have a voice, and so he came out on stage, and he's disabled, so he's not walking. He can't walk really well.
So he's got no voice and he
He has
can't
no
walk.
voice, so he's got a box, and he plays the box. He puts his jokes in there and plays it, and
You can like type on it.
so he was
Like
an
Stephen
automated
Hawking
voice.
type.
Yeah,
yeah,
sort of.
something like
Minus
that.
the Epstein Island.
And we were just talking about how good comedians seem to be able to laugh at themselves, you know, and he jokes about his disability. And he was talking about the, what were you talking about?
So he was saying how it's
special
funny how
needs.
they refer to them as special needs. Like they have this like nice way of calling them.
We have
Disabled.
Special
Disabled, and
Olympics,
it's-
special needs, special this, special that.
Handy capable.
And so he said, it always worries me when I hear them say we have special forces. Talking about the military, but he's really funny. He was real funny. So, well, why don't we wade into the episode why don't we start by
Sorry,
thinking.
that was late.
That was really late.
Yeah, it came to me a little late.
Why don't we start by maybe just giving us a little background on where you were born, raised, and kind of how you came to Utah?
Yeah, so I was born 22 years ago. Can you believe that? I was born in Sacramento, California. That's where my parents had me. But we moved from Sacramento, I believe, when I was 3. So I don't recall anything about Sacramento whatsoever. My parents moved to Los Angeles, but Los Angeles County, there's a city, some people know it, some people don't, called Glendale, California. So it's about 15, 20 minutes north of like downtown Los Angeles, give or take. And yeah, so the only thing Glendale is really known for is they have a really big mall called the Glendale Galleria / Americana. And they have the highest population of Armenians outside of Armenia. Those are the only 2 things Glendale is known for.
Wow.
So
Is that why they moved there? Because correct
no.
me if I'm wrong. That's your
No, I'm my mother's Greek.
Right.
No, not at all. At the time, Glendale was, I'd say, cheaper than some of the other places in LA County. I really don't know why they ended up in Glendale. I think it was because my dad's parents were living in Glendale, and so my grandpa was the bishop of a ward in Glendale. We'll get to that in a second. What is a bishop? What is a ward? But for those that don't know. And so, yeah, I grew up in Glendale up until I was 16 years old. That's when I moved to Utah. But majority of my life has been spent in Glendale. And that was kind of a unique experience. Definitely, you get to be around a lot of different cultures and diversity, which can be cool. Learn neat stuff from people. Try a bunch of different foods, things like that. It's a very melting pot sort of city.
What's the
than the
population?
population of Glendale, I'd say 200 to 300,000 people.
Okay.
So I mean, it's like
That's big.
all of Utah County is fitting in Glendale.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Glendale is now a more like higher income type area. When I was growing up, it was kind of just working class and a lot of like immigrants, like immigration from Armenia. So, but yeah, I grew up in Glendale and grew up LDS, aka Mormon, for those people that
Latter-day Saint.
Latter-day Saint.
Yeah.
So my little bit of background, my father was born in Provo, raised LDS all the way. Like my lineage in the LDS church goes to, I believe it's like 1820 is when the first members converted. On my dad's side, basically they were a group of Methodist in England is how the story goes. And Joseph Smith, one of the first missions he started sending missionaries out to was England. If I had to assume why, probably because you don't have to teach people a language they already speak, right? And so there was a group of Methodists, and I guess they were unhappy with the way the Methodist church was going. LDS missionaries had come, and I think like out of the 90% of the people who were in that Methodist sect converted to being LDS.
Wow.
End up coming to the United States, and then eventually spread out in generations, and were some of the first pioneers ever in Utah and Idaho. I believe it's my great grandmother was the last living person to have met Joseph Smith personally. So that's my dad's side of the family has been LDS since,
That's pretty
the
cool.
dawn. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it would have been in Illinois, where he was
Yeah.
was where he was killed. She would have been there and then would have came over with Brigham Young into Utah territory.
How the story goes is she was there when Brigham Young became, like, she wrote everything down in a journal. So she was there when Brigham Young became the prophet and said that a light beamed out of like heaven and shined on him. And that's how they knew he was going to be the prophet or something along those sorts that she wrote in her journal. And then just talks about like the hardships of pioneers coming to Utah. Definitely.
Do you have her journal? Do you have access?
Yeah, it's in my family. I believe it's on my like family tree account. Like that's the LDS Church's version of like Ancestry.
Yeah.
So I'll have to pull that up. But yeah, so dad's lineage, very, very like, you know, beginning Latter-day Saint Mormons. My mom's side, my mom was the second generation American. So my grandfather was born in America by Greek immigrants. And all that side since the dawn of time has been Greek Orthodox. That's what they were when they came here. My grandfather was Greek Orthodox. My mom, I don't believe, was baptized in the Greek Orthodox Church. It kind of started fading out with my grandpa. But every Christmas and Easter, they would go to the Greek Orthodox Church. And
we had a Greek Orthodox as a guest.
Yeah, we did.
Father
Justin.
Yeah, go back and listen.
Yeah,
it's a good
go back
episode.
and listen to that episode.
Yeah, so my mom's from Boston. My dad's from Provo, Utah. They meet in California. They get married. They have me. My mom converted to being LDS before she married my dad. She got baptized in the LDS faith. And they have me, and I'm raised in the LDS church up until I'm 18. When I'm growing up, though, it's different growing up LDS in California compared to like the Mecca of the LDS church in Utah.
Yeah.
Very different culturally. People think differently. I'd say it's less legalistic for sure. But yeah, growing up, my high school, I mean, like there was one LDS kid besides me in my high school, and him and I were in the same ward. For a while, my grandfather was my bishop in my ward. So that was kind of neat, right? I guess kind of like being a pastor's child, but
we don't know what that's
grandchild.
like.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Who knows what being a pastor. So, but great people. I mean, in my California ward, people were cool, and, you know, you get some bad apples, but everybody kind of, it was such a small, like, minority religion in Glendale that like everyone kind of knew each other, and like the stake activities, which are where all the local wards have a big activity, like get together. But yeah, it was cool. But I grew up in like this old LDS mindset that was really put on me by my dad, which was, you know, we're the true church. All those other churches are, you know, Church of Satan, or just like absolute heretical. Like, we are the true church. We have the true restored gospel. Whereas you see like in modern day, the LDS church is very, you know, we're Christians just like you, and we just want to be another denomination of Christianity. When I was growing up, it was not that way.
Yeah.
At least not the way I was taught by my family. I'm sure it varied from family to family, but it was very legalistic growing up. It was very, you know, you make sure you're at church on time every Sunday, stuff like that. A key thing, my parents divorced when I was 3. So when I was with my dad, it was, you know, the super legalistic, like we got an LDS reputation to uphold. Like, you know, you're the bishop's grandson, I'm the bishop's son. Like, we gotta, you know, really be to a point. When I was with my mom, she was more laid back, and just, my mom wanted me to go to a church to keep me from, like, you know,
paganism.
No, crime, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Glendale's not known for a ton of crime. It was there. And so my mom just wanted me to be in church, to have good influences around.
I don't think I knew your mom and dad divorced when you were that young.
Yeah.
Did they stay in the same area, or did one move away?
Yeah, no. So, they moved to Los Angeles when I was 3, got divorced shortly after that, and happened to live
in the same Glendale.
Yeah, pretty much.
Area.
Like, yeah. So, I mean, probably like within 10 minutes, like the same city.
Wow.
My dad lived in Glendale. My mom lived in Glendale. And like, yeah, So
And your mom continued to go to the LDS church.
yeah, well, and you know, I ask my mom sometimes, and she's like, I really had serious questions. Like, my mom kind of went through a whole faith journey where she jumped from like Jehovah's Witness and, you know, like more independent Baptist, and jumped through all these things. And then when she met my dad, it was, I don't know how much my mom really believed it, but it was kind of like, we're getting married, I'm going to be the same religion as you. So, I mean, that she'd be a guest to have on to ask, you know, what her confession was. But yeah, she wanted me to go to church. She took me to church. And a lot of, I think it was a really good experience for me growing up in the LDS church. It taught me a lot of things. One was, you know, my dad struggled with some substance abuse issues. So he would be in my life and not be in my life. And so the church kind of like raised me, like presented father figures. And, you know, like I probably would have never gone camping or things like that if it wasn't for like the Boy Scout program and the young men's whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so growing up, you know, went through primary, went through young men's. And then when I turned 12, went to the temple for the first time and did baptisms for the dead. That was a really interesting thing. Should I go into depth on that, or?
I mean, this would be, is this we had CJ on.
Yeah.
CJ is a friend of yours.
Correct.
And
that kind of shows two sides of the coin. Someone who grew up heavily, you know, in the LDS community compared to someone.
was an LDS.
Right, but that was an LDS.
I don't think we've had anybody else on yet to kind of talk about some of these in-depth topics that comes to the LDS, but that's one of our goals this season is we'd like to, because I mean we want to have, we talk about the mission of this podcast is to get other people on that don't agree completely with our faith, or in some ways they don't agree with any of it, but in religion, just hear them and hear what they believe, how they get, and then we would, you know, critique those things. And so we had some of those, but the biggest, you know, we're absorbed in the LDS culture here in Utah. I mean, right. And so I don't think it would be, maybe it would be educational. I would think it'd be educational if you went into just a little detail about what that is, but not trying to go too much where you're going
I'll keep it
everybody.
Really simple. So baptisms for the dead. I mean, that kind of already has like a negative sounding term to it off the bat, right? But so temples, if you have any experience with the LDS Mormon religion, like you'll probably heard of temples, the big shiny buildings that are unique in architecture and kind of stick out, and there's probably one near you. They're everywhere. And so in temples, one of the first, they call it like ordinances, one of the first things you can do is get baptized in place of somebody who's already died, if that kind of makes sense.
And how old were you?
12.
You were 12 when you went in to do this for the first time.
So how it starts is you're 12, and then you meet with your bishop, and he asks you a series of like moral, ethical questions, like do you drink? Well, word of wisdom, right, which is like the LDS code of ethics, I guess you could say in a way. You know, are you adulterer? Like, I'm 12 years old. You know, are you adulterer? Like, do you drink? Do you smoke? Do you drink caffeine? Do you drink coffee? Do you drink tea? Do you drink Coca-Cola? And oh, man, I was, so basically those are you ethical in your business dealings? I'm 12 years old. You know what I mean? Like,
you know, that lemonade stand you have, you know.
Yeah. And at the time, so when I turned 12, my grandfather was no longer my bishop. He had moved on. They're usually only bishop for about 5 years. And so the bishop at the time was like, I know you, like, you're a good kid. Like, I'm not even concerned about these at all. Like, here's your temple recommend. So your temple recommend is basically your license that shows your worthiness to enter into a temple.
Okay.
So you get that when you're 12. So I got my temple recommend, and then usually like the young men's, so I guess like young men's would equivalent to like youth ministry, but for just, you know, the young men, and it goes from 12 to 18. So the young men's would do like an activity where we would like go to the temple and have like a temple day. So we go, and it's my first time doing a baptism for the dead. And, you know, baptism is a key in salvation in LDS doctrine. So if someone's died and they didn't get baptized while they were on earth, you can get baptized on earth in their place, and then they have the option to receive that in the afterlife, which is, like, I'm trying to not go super in depth, but spirit prison, pretty much, a place where people are waiting for someone to get baptized on earth.
Something similar to a Catholic like purgatory.
And so one thing that really stuck out in my mind, like when I'm 12 years old, I'm going in the temple, you have to show your ID, and then you get pretty much like your all white jumpsuit. That's what you get. That's what you get baptized in when you're 8. So I was baptized when I was 8 too. But basically, when you get baptized, you wear an all white jumpsuit if you're getting baptized, male or female. So they give you, your all white jumpsuit. It's time to get baptized and I'd never done this before. I'd never been to the temple. It's like, oh, this is what they've been talking about my whole life, growing up. I can't wait to see the temple, things like that. So we're all lined up. You pass them your temple recommend ID card. It gets scanned. You walk on through, you go find the white jumpsuit that will fit you. And then you get handed a key with a bobby pin on it. And this is the key for your locker to lock your stuff up in. And in my head, I'm thinking, wait a second. If I'm worthy enough to be here, to where I've gone through the interview, I'm a worthy individual to be in the house of the Lord, who is going to steal from me here? Like, why do I have a locker? Like, that locks, it's not just like
Satan's going to steal from you.
Well, and so I'm like, isn't everybody else here like worthy too? That kind of like was a question that arose in my mind. Like,
how did you lose your temple recommend? Well, I stole somebody's white garments in the temple.
Well, I mean, like lockers, you're putting like your walk, because you're in there with all the other men.
Right,
what I mean? Like, you're in there with older men, younger men.
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, someone's gonna steal from me in here, like, So I lock my stuff up, and then you all line up, and then another concept. So this makes more sense what a baptism for the dead is. So basically, if you have a family member and they die, let's say, Kirk's great grandpa dies, right? Kirk can give his name to his ward, and then the ward will send that to like the temple records. And then some male can get baptized in place of Kirk's grandpa, but there has to be permission from the family.
Right. Okay.
Take this with a grain of salt. I guess the story on there didn't used to be permission. Like, you didn't have to have a direct family member come forward and give the permission for that person to receive a baptism for the dead. They started that rule after apparently they tried to baptize Holocaust people who died in the Holocaust that were Jews. So then that rule got enacted because Jewish community was a little unhappy about that. At least that's the story I've been told. But so, yeah, like I'm in line, and then
how many people were we talking about? Like,
so in my ward, I mean, growing up in Glendale, California, I mean, my ward, the young men, man, I don't think it ever exceeded like 15 kids.
And where was the temple?
Temple was the LA temple. That was the first one.
Okay.
And which is a pretty huge temple.
Got it.
Significant temple. So it's in downtown Los Angeles, in one of like the crappiest parts of Los Angeles. It's just like homeless people everywhere, and then this big shiny temple that's gated,
Wow. Huh.
Just like, I mean, it's not too far from Skid Row, which is one of the worst homeless, calamities in the United States. Just streets full of tents. It's like an RV park. It's sad, it's sad. But so yeah, I get lined up. I don't remember who was doing the baptisms. I'm pretty sure it was just my young men's leader. So everybody will get into the baptismal font, and then there will be a guy behind a computer who's got the names, and then the person who's baptizing you. Go look up a Google image of this so it all makes sense what a baptismal font is in the temple. But it's kind of like a jacuzzi, on like a second level jacuzzi, and underneath the jacuzzi there's golden oxen statues that are holding up this jacuzzi looking thing. So yeah, you hop in, and then the guy behind the computer is putting names of people who have passed away onto a screen, and then the person who's baptizing you is reading the names off the screen, and you're getting baptized for these people. And like, I just remember most of the people I was getting baptized for were like people who, were like born in 1860, 1870, like who had passed away, and that's who I was. And I think I did like 12 or 13 baptisms, and then they switched to the next kid.
Wow.
So what did the act of that look like? Did they dunk you under for 12 or 13 times?
Oh,
for every
no.
person?
Like I got dunked under, in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, pulled back up. You have to be fully submerged. So LDS Church doesn't believe in infant baptism. Their baptism has to be fully submerged. If even a part of your body comes out of the water, you have to be rebaptized again. You can't have any piece of your body come out of the water. So you're getting dunked, next name, dunked, next name, dunked, next name, boom.
Wow.
And so, so I did that, and that was kind of, and this is kind of crazy. This is going to sound crazy, but I was really disappointed and sad that day because I remember my dad told me stories of him doing baptisms for the dead. And my dad was like saying that all the people he was getting baptized for, their ghosts were watching him from the stands. So there's like stands around the baptismal font, and he could see the people he was getting baptized for, like in the stands. And that is a really common thing among like the LDS culture. Like he's not just the only person who's told me they've seen the ghost of people they're getting baptized for.
Maybe you forgot to take the pill before you started baptizing.
And so
maybe there's a special pill.
And so like this is my first time doing baptisms for the dead, and I'm not seeing the dead people I just got baptized for. And I'm like depressed about it. I'm like, do I not have the Holy Spirit? Like, am I not worthy to be in this place? Like, there was a whole lot of like guilt and like shame because why am I not seeing the people who and now looking at it, man, if I saw that, I'd probably like as an adult, I'd be like, we need to go get checked here.
Hey, if you were unworthy anyway, I would have just gone and stole some stuff from people's lockers. I mean,
can you imagine being there and they say, okay, next, Ulysses S. Grant. I got baptized for Ulysses.
And I mean, that's not like the church has, whether this is 100% doctored or not. In church writings, they say that like all of the former presidents have been baptized.
Yeah,
Like,
can you imagine doing that? That would be something you would hang on.
Yeah.
I got baptized for Abe Lincoln. Oh yeah, well I got baptized for George Washington. Oh yeah.
So how do they decide who you get baptized for? Like, is there a rhyme or reason?
It has to be males. So males can only get baptized for males. Females can only get baptized in a female's place.
Okay.
How they do names, I'm not sure. I would assume it's just randomized. Like names are submitted, and then those names you can
submitted by whom?
So family members.
Okay,
so it has to be
you.
direct family member has to submit the name, and then that ends up at the temple, and then someone who's doing baptismal work is what usually the shortened name is instead of baptism for the dead. Oh, I'm going to go do baptism work at the temple. Those people get baptized for those names.
Gotcha.
And so like if you have a family member, like let's say, you're a woman and you want your former grandpa or something, you'll submit the name and a male will get baptized in their place. Vice versa with females.
Can they get baptized? Like, how many people can get baptized for one person who's already died? Or is it just
I don't think
one
there's
person?
a cap on it.
Oh, really?
I mean, I did 12 my first time. 12 or 13.
Yeah, but like...
I would have given you 50.
For like the same person. Like...
Oh, I mean, yeah, no.
Yeah, for like one name that's already died.
Yeah,
how many people can baptize?
I think there's only one baptism for one person.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think multiple people get baptized
But
for
what
the
if
same
I
person.
have a vision that person in afterlife rejected the fullness of the gospel, and we need to get baptized again?
So
I
I was told you can, like, I mean, we'll get to this down the line, how the subjectivity and the emotional aspect of what makes fact and what makes truth, right?
Right.
That's part of my testimony. But I was told you can just feel like when you get that good feeling, that person accepted it. So I don't know if anybody accepted mine. I was super
Another
depressed
side
that
effect
day.
of the pill they gave you before you.
But yeah, so, and I mean, did that. And then, okay. It's been a while since I've been in the LDS church, but I believe it is at 15, you become a priest. So at 12, you're a deacon. Next step up is priest. Then after priest is 18, elder. And so you can become a priest, and that's when you can start performing baptisms at like 15 and 16. And so the next time I went to the temple, I think I went like a couple more times, but when I became a priest, my buddy was doing the baptism for me. And so like we were on a high adventure trip. High adventure is like usually a yearly trip that the young men's or it'll be co-ed and they'll go like do something fun. for our high adventure, I was like 15, 16 at the time, 15. Our high adventure, we came to St. George, Utah, and like hiked the Narrows and hiked Zion, and went to the St. George Temple in Brigham Young's summer home. Wow. So we went to the St. George Temple, and my buddy was baptizing me, and I just remember he was kind of like having fun with it, and he was like choke slamming me in the baptismal font, where I'm like smacking my head every time he like. Anyways, but just some things that stick out. But yeah, so
Undertaker choke slammed.
Right. So like, which now, you know, being a Christian, like thinking a 16-year-old doing a baptism was kind of like a little bit of, you know,
weird.
Yeah, a little weird thought. But yeah, so 16 years old. I'm a sophomore in high school, and I finished my sophomore year in Glendale, and I'm just hating the high school. It was like I definitely was not going to graduate high school if I stayed at that high school. The academics were just not there, and you know, there was no real motivation from any of my teachers, nothing like that. I felt like I wasn't being helped when I had questions. And so I'm living with my mom at this point. My dad is kind of going through his struggles and is not in my life. Oh, sorry. Let me back up with something key here. So, like I said, growing up, I was told all other religions were not true, were bad. Like, you don't want to be around them, right? So I'm like a kid in Los Angeles, and I remember my parents had joint custody. So my dad ended up moving from Glendale when I was like 10, 11 years old. My dad moved from Glendale to Orange County, which is about almost a 2-hour drive from Glendale. And I'm in like elementary school, and we're making that drive every single day. So like that,
wow.
Yeah, 2 hours. So mom would drop me off at school. Dad would pick me up 2 hours to Orange County. And then at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm woken up to drive 2 hours back to Glendale for school. And this was the thing that happened like every other day because my dad had got remarried. He married this LDS lady who was pretty abusive, I'd have to say, just like not a great person. But so I'm still going to church with my dad. I'm still going to church with my mom. When my dad moved to Orange County, my mom was like not forcing me to go to church. She was just kind of like, I want you to go because you want to go. Like, I don't want to force a belief on you. Mm-hmm. And I started becoming, you know, a teenager and rebellious, and I don't want to go to church. When I'm at dad's house, you're going to church. You know what I mean? Because I think it was more about images, like keeping up images. Mm-hmm. Hey, all my kids go to church, things like that. My dad ended up divorcing my stepmom as I was entering middle school, and my dad just kind of disappeared in and out from my life for a year or two. Had kind of no idea where he was at. And so that was like, no one's forcing me to go to church anymore. I was still going because I did like going, but I had a friend who went to a Nazarene church. I'd never been to a Christian church like prior to this. Mm-hmm. Everyone I grew up with was either Catholic, Armenian Orthodox, or I grew up with a lot of Jehovah's Witness too. They never invited me to church. And my dad was like, yeah, I don't care who invites you. Like, you're not going. They can come to our church first before you can go to their church. Yeah. And so I had a friend who was going to a Nazarene church and was like, hey, like, you should come to one of my church events. I don't know if this friend was actually a believer. I think he was just going because he had a fun time. And so I start going to this Nazarene church. Looking at it now, I'm pretty sure they were a gospel preaching church, but I'm going there, and I'm not going there to convert. I'm just going there because there's kids my age, and, right, and I'm making friends, and like we're all hanging out. And they did like these events like every Wednesday. You know, it was like supposed to be Bible study, but involved pizza and the youth pastor playing on his guitar and us having a great time. You know,
right?
There might be a thing or two that involves the word, but other than that, really nothing. So I'm going there, and I remember the youth pastor, he was like, basically telling me, he's like, you're in a cult. Like, he knew I was LDS, and he's like, you're pretty much in a cult. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, you don't know what you're talking about. And then he's like, well, I'm just saying, man, I don't think you should keep going back to that church, to the LDS church. And I was like, like, this dude doesn't know what he's talking about, right? And then he approached me one day. He's like, hey, do you want to get baptized? I was like, what? Like, I am baptized. Like, because, this church would do like a monthly baptism where everybody would just line up and get baptized, kind of a thing.
Right.
And like I said, I think they were a believing gospel church. I look at their statement of faith now as an adult, and it's, pretty on point with like ours. I don't really know what Nazarene to this day, what they wholeheartedly, like what separates a Nazarene from a Baptist, vice versa. But
that could be another podcast.
I also don't think that a lot of them know, because I've been to a few, and dude, they vary from church to church. I mean, some of them, like, it doesn't even seem like they know what they believe. It's just like Christianese terms I'm going to throw at you from the pulpit. And it's like, oh, okay.
Well, so at this time I started going to this Nazarene church. I never, like, I think I went for one Sunday church session, and then I went for like a Palm Sunday and got the charcoal like cross put on my forehead. And that was like just kind of going because my friends were going to this church.
Right.
My dad enters back into my life. He actually gets remarried around this time. I'm like 15 years old and going on like 16. And my dad like finds out I'm going to this other church, and he like loses his mind about it, because he comes back. He's like, we can't have you, like, stop going to that church. At the same time, like, I grew up around a lot of like Armenian Hispanic people. And so a lot of my Hispanic friends were wearing like rosemaries, you know what I mean? So it's like, oh, this is like a trendy fashion statement. Like I got myself a rosemary or rosary. Yeah. And so I'm like wearing a rosary, and I like wore it. I started seeing my dad once he got remarried, because he got clean and sober at the time. And so I start seeing him, and I just remember he's like, you're not going to wear that in my house. I'm like, it's a cross. Like, aren't we like Christian, like, don't we believe in Jesus? Like, it's a cross, right? For those of you that don't know, crosses are like nowhere to be found in the LDS church. Like, they're not in churches.
They were. Now a lot more people are.
Yeah, now they've changed it, right?
Which I'm gonna.
But like, my dad was like, we don't wear crosses because we don't focus on. This is exactly what he said to me. We don't focus on the death of Jesus. We focus on his works and his miracles. In hindsight, that's like the most important thing Jesus did was die for us, So yeah, that's just kind of a little bit basic about my upbringing. But
what we want to do, because I would like to, we'd pick up maybe next time.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll go into when you get here in Utah.
Yeah. And then that's where things start to change.
But I think even hearing your story, because we may have listeners who are going to be part of the LDS church. And because, again, that's where we are, and the majority of people here are LDS. If you're listening and you're LDS and you feel like we might be misrepresenting your position, please let us know, contact us and let us know. I think it's significant to at least kind of end this podcast, this episode, with the fact that we have many, friends and acquaintances, neighbors who are part of LDS church. And we want to be good neighbors. We want to be good citizens.
I mean, some of the nicest people you'll ever meet.
Oh, yeah.
Friendliest people, like great neighbors,
Right. But I think the big thing that's going to come out of this, and probably definitely next episode, when we talk about it, but there are major differences.
For sure.
When we talk about, and even though those differences seem to be from a surface level, there's a lot of things that the LDS church is saying is okay that they didn't at one time, or at least making the distinction themselves that they are the one true church and every other church is not right, like every other religion is not right. We would say the same thing, right? I mean, we're called to love all people. We're called to serve all people. We're called to help in any way we can all people. But that does not mean we affirm that every religion is correct, and that every religion is going to make you right with God, your creator. There is a gospel. There is the gospel. We can put a definite article there, right? And we find it from in the Bible, and so just some of the things we've talked about today, the baptism thing. We believe the Bible doesn't teach that baptism does anything to forgive your sins, to wash your sins away. It is a picture. It is a way of you publicly confessing your faith in the gospel, which is Jesus dying and being buried and rising again to conquer your sin. And it's that finished work of Jesus that we're trusting in. And when you confess your sin, you repent of your sin and you confess that, baptism is saying, hey, I want the world to know I'm married to Jesus. Like I've confessed, my faith is in him. I'm resting in him. That's just one, difference. There's many, but I thought it would be good to end on that, just so, if you have any questions regarding that. And again, this is going to be something we're probably going to hit on a lot this season, is having some people in to talk about him, because we got people here at Arch City Church that have grew up in an LDS background.
And my experience, I mean, if you're LDS and listening, my experience is going to be probably different than yours, right? Everybody's story is going to be different. Maybe,
right.
Maybe you grew up, but that's how I was raised in the LDS culture in my city where I'm from. Like that's, and with my parents, right? That's how I was raised. So, which honestly is drastic from what is taught today,
right?
In my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, and that's another thing that I kind of wanted to land on as we end here. Just getting our listeners to just be challenged, have something to think about. Is there are, what did we just talk about? The cross not showing up in any LDS churches or anything. And then Lana chimed in and she said, well, that's how it used to be. Mm-hmm. They're looser about it now. And we talk about these things that, 5-10 years ago was different. And now, and again, I don't want to misrepresent anything, but here we do believe in an absolute truth, and that is the Bible. And that truth is never changing. Mm-hmm. Jesus never changes. What the Bible says never changes. And it does seem like if you don't have an absolute truth at the center of what you believe, if things are constantly changing, what do you believe? Why does it matter? So it's just important to think about these things. What is your absolute truth? Do you have an absolute truth? And why is it important to put your trust in something that never changes? For us, that's the Bible. We believe that is the truth. That never falters, that never changes. God never changes who he is.
Yeah, something tested. Something that you go back and you look at is thousands of years old, translated into many languages, and today still. Yeah,
and it's not about like Lyric was saying, after we were baptized for the dead, if you have a good feeling, then that
that they accepted it.
We don't chase the good feelings to know our truth. We just have it right in front of us in the Bible. That's God's word, whether we feel good about it or not. Yeah, that's what God says.
And sometimes we don't feel good about it, like most of the time, actually.
It's
because it's a hard truth, but it is truth.
It is.
Well put.
So
I'm excited. Yeah. I think it's going to be exciting to see you come and finish, pick up where you left off here, where you moved to Utah, and just start talking about your story and how
the best part of your life where you met us.
Right.
That me.
Just when you met Jesus.
Final thought I'll say for this episode. There's a lot of, this is like an 18-year testimony, right? Coming to Christ kind of a thing. But there's a lot of details that may have just kind of slipped my mind. I tried to tell the key things. So as much as I could for this episode.
Yeah, sure. Right? Yeah. It was great. Good. It was very interesting. And man, it's just exciting to hear, like you said, your story is going to be different than somebody else's, and not only like ours, but in other LDS too. But there are also similarities. There's things that people are going to grab hold to and say, yeah, that's something that I did struggle with, or I'm struggling with now. And, that's why we're here at Arch City Church. Again, if you are struggling, you got questions, we'd love for you to reach out to Arch City Church. Go to our website, fill out a Connect card, and we'd love to answer those type of questions. So,
hey, happy season 3 premiere, guys.
Is that what we're on?
Season 3.
How many episodes were in season 2?
10. So this is our 21st episode.
Woohoo! Nice.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
No,
it's been a crazy really 2023 to get those other 2 seasons in. So,
and hopefully, if you've been listening this far, now that we're kind of back and getting our stuff together, we're going to have start getting more guests on, because that's really what we want to end up doing here.
We have a guest on. You're not calling him a real guest?
Guests other than Put It Down Man over here.
Jeez. Wow. He just undermined your
I'm actually moving back to Glendale after this
whole episode.
I can't stand you people.
No, we love you, Lyric. You're awesome.
And we're excited about hearing your story.
All right.
So,
well,
thanks for being part of this podcast.
Part two is going to be better. I think part two will be more interesting.
I mean, no, this was interesting.
Part one's a little bit of a bore, guys, so bear with it. But
my goodness,
hopefully
all my issues in life.
If you didn't get the warm fuzzy in your belly for this episode, you'll get it next episode.
Yes, and you'll know that it's the Holy Spirit. You'll know.
Oh, goodness.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us this podcast, this episode, and we'll see you next time on Faith and Fellowship.
Goodbye.
Yeah, like that.
See, it's easier for them to stay there for him because he has no hair and his head provides the friction needed. I have hair, so it just wants to slip.
I should bring my own headphones.
As long as they have it's not a 3.5 millimeter jack. It's like a, what do you call it? A thick one. I guess we'll get quiet on the set. This is not quiet on the set.
I'm ready. I got burp.
Quiet on the set.
Now you can burp. That was a hair.
Are you gonna burp before we start?
I'll try and burp during the intros. It's gonna take a second.
All right. Well, you're doing the intro because you've been gone for the past 4 episodes.
I don't want to do the intro. I get made fun of every time I do an intro.
Dude, I've been...